Wrong. Wrong. Slippery. Hey, look. Just watching the neighbors like Jimmy Stewart in Rear Window. I can't sit with my shoes on. I always sit Indian style, you know, cross-legged. It's the only comfortable way to sit, as far as I'm concerned. Hello. Hello. Hi, everybody. Well, there's no one here yet, so. This is my earliest live ever. It's 8:20. I'm looking at my calendar. It's June. I need glasses. It's hard to put the glasses on sometimes because, you know, my scalp is loose. My scalp being the wig cap. It is June 11th. Yeah. I like holding my hair now that I have some. This should be higher, shouldn't it? Wait, let me try something. Try this. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's my favorite or most useful part from the movie Rebel Without a Cause. Oh, having issues here. Why is everything so slippery today? I think pretty much I don't need the light on, I don't think. Look. Oh, it's my lame background. 2 Nancy Drew puzzles. This one's not even out of the shrink wrap. Oh, you want to see them? Okay. Ah! My day's starting out great. Well, this is my fault. I don't have a good camera or tripod or anything good. I have some good things. I have good hair now. So, let's see. This is my first Nancy Drew puzzle. So, the cover is kind of bulging because of the bag of pieces is bulging. 5,000 pieces? 1,000 pieces. This is, okay. The bag is too bulbous. Where is the book we're reading right now? It's number 40. Right here. The Moonstone Castle Mystery. This is one of my favorite covers, and they put it big on the puzzle. So it goes from Secret of the Old Clock to the 13th Pearl. And then I've got to flatten out my puzzle piece bag because the cover won't go, the box top won't go on properly because it's bulging. Oh, thanks. And then this one is, I haven't done this one yet. It's still in the shrink wrap. This one is the original covers. Right? Yeah. Which goes from Secret of the Old Clock to The Clue of the Leaning Chimney. I love these covers. I mean, I think my favorite covers are, my favorite covers are definitely all from the newer ones, but these ones are really pretty too. Like The Clue in the Jewel Box. I like the originals. It's so much nicer. What's the Mrs. Dondo one? Hidden Window Mystery. What number is the Hidden Window Mystery? Oh, is that on here? I don't see it. Anyway, there's a lot less covers on here than there is on the other one. What number is the Hidden Window Mystery? Because I don't see it. It must be a later one then. Because this goes to Clue of the Leaning Chimney. Come on, people. I'm going to start soon. My voice can't go for too long without getting silly. Well, it's not even 8:30 yet, I don't think. I said 8:30. Eastern Standard Time. It's 8:25, so. Oh, is my tea cold already? Do you ever mix teas and you're not sure how it's going to turn out? It's all right. I want to get a better, I'll just move my entire self over. And I have to remember, look here. Am I looking at you? Hold on a second, I'm getting something. This is a broken necklace. Oh no. Please don't fall down. Don't mind me. I'm trying to make things not fall on the floor. A broken necklace. Well, it's not too broken, is it? Broken. Yeah, it's broken, but it's like pretty, isn't it? Isn't it pretty? Well, I guess I'll take it apart and do something with it. But oh, it would make a nice little crown thingy. Or some kind of something. Like a hair thing. Now my hair is stuck in it. Some kind of thing that goes like this. Let's put it back without dropping everything. I have a lot of stuff that hangs, but it doesn't have proper things to hang from. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? And that's not good. I shouldn't have done that. Now I've done it. Put it over here. No. It's hanging from a picture frame, so I'll just put it here. There, whatever. Okay, you guys, I'm waiting so we can start. I'll just open this box first. What's your favorite flower? Mine are pansies. Here's an old box that says Happy Easter, and it has pansies on it. I have some pictures of Glenna in here. You guys, we haven't even started reading and I've lost my voice. Oh, it's a squirrel. Please come in, Mr. Squirrel. You want a peanut? Hey, do you want to see the squirrel? Mr. Squirrel. Mr. Squirrel. Do you want a peanut? Okay, hold on, okay? Hold on. I'm going to give the squirrel a peanut. Can you see him? Hi. Hi, little. I wish you'd come right up to my window. I'm almost out of peanuts. That's not good. Whoops. I don't know how to, I don't know how to do things properly. I can't hold this. Calm down, Nancy. Beep, 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 beep. I can't zoom in. That's great. Okay, bye. Bye. There. Maybe someone will see that if they watch it back. I love squirrels. You'll have to bear with me. It's early. I haven't slept well. I never sleep well. The only time I sleep well is when I'm knocked out for an operation. I'm thinking about getting, asking my doctor for some sleeping pills because I try that melanin. Okay, I'm having a big problem with my phone. If nobody comes, I'm just going to stop because I don't feel like talking to no one. I could save my voice. Oh, somebody's there. Okay, don't go. Please stay. Please stay. Please. Thank you. I fed a squirrel. You missed the squirrel. It's very early for me. What time is it where you are? They're gone. I'll stay a little bit longer, and if nobody comes, I'll just turning it off. Oh, look. Want to see pretty handkerchiefs? I have pretty handkerchiefs I can show you. This one is so pretty. I'm showing pretty handkerchiefs. They're so beautiful. Okay. This one has pansies all over it. I don't know if these were Glenna's or these might have been my grandmother's. I'm not sure. Old handkerchiefs. Aren't they beautiful? We'll go through them all, okay? Here's another purple one. If you know the flowers, please say them. I don't know all flowers. These look like roses, purple roses. Here's a little sheer one. I don't know which is the right side. Oh, Well, it's the same on both sides, I guess. Right. You get to see both sides are the right side. Here's a pink one. It's just plain, but it has a pretty edge on it. Oh, it says pure Irish linen. Ooh, that would be nice for embroidery. I got to get back into embroidery. It's so nice. I like just doing it without a pattern. And embroidery is nicer than cross stitch because cross stitch is just X's over and over and over again. With embroidery, you can like freestyle. Here's a really pretty one. Oh, very stained, some of them. From age, I guess. Is it? No, it has like a straight line across it. No, maybe it's not stained. That's supposed to be like that, I guess. This one says something on it. Oh, I don't know who this is. This one has a name on it. I'm not sure who Lillian is. I'll have to ask my mom or my dad. This one says Lillian on it. I'm not sure who Lillian is. Some lady from the past. Maybe a relative. I don't know. I didn't realize how many were in here. Okay. This one's pretty. I like these colors. I didn't realize how many there were. Isn't this one pretty? I love the colors. Pink, blue, and white. This one's kind of boring. Just like some circle thingies. Green and white circle things. Woo, it smells old. This one's interesting. Here is a, ooh, there's some more flower ones coming up. Just a purple one. These ones are boring. Just plain purple. Ooh, this one's nice. It would be fun to, I mean, I like having Kleenexes. You can just throw them in the garbage, but these are so pretty. This one has little flowers in the corner. I keep turning it around because I think there's a right side and a wrong side, but it's not. It's not. It's the same on both sides. Pretty flowers. Oh, this one has a sticker on it too. It says, oh boy, I don't know if I can read that. Switzerland. Made in Switzerland. All cotton. This one is Swiss. And two more. This one's really dirty and just kind of like boring. And this one has another pretty flower on it. Are those pansies or violets? Violets? So there are some very, oh wow, they were really packed in there good. I can't fold like people of the past. And now it's like my puzzle box. It's all bulgy now because there was still something else on it. There's Glenna pictures. I forgot where these were. I was looking for these. So Glenna had a really cool car. I don't remember what kind of car it was. My dad would know just by looking at it because he's a car guy. Happy Easter. But it was blue, like a pale blue, and she had a big white poodle painted on the side of it. And it had a rhinestone collar with like big jewels on it. I remember that from my childhood. Like, I mean, you can't forget that. And somebody bought the car, a collector, I think, and it went out of the province. And I wonder, the same way I wonder with Sir Pips, the suit of armor, what happened to the poodle car? So there are poodle car pictures in here. It's kind of hard to see the, oh, maybe only a few. And she calls it the poodle. The poodle. Oh, wait. If I zoomed in, is it a Ford? I don't know. Car people, what kind of a car is this? On the side, oh, you can see the poodle there. The big white poodle, and he's got a gemstone collar. It's kind of hard to see here. Is that a Ford? Somebody will know what that is. That car. That's the poodle car. I'm going to look and see if there are more poodles in here. I have more of the poodle car somewhere. I just don't know where. Okay, that was the only poodle in there. I have one on my fridge of the poodle car. I'll show you. And then we're going to start chapter 3. Oh, look, this is from Expo 67. Expo 67. 1963. Wait a minute. Wasn't Expo 67 in 67? So why does it say 1963 Expo 67? Hey, that's when our book is from. Connections. I don't understand. Okay, I'll show you one more picture of the car. Right, okay. This one you can see it better. That's the poodle car. I wish there was, I mean, I can picture it up close in my head, but I wish there was a close-up of the poodle. He's got big, shiny rhinestone collars. So cute. This is September 1974. That's Glenna. That goes back on my fridge. All right, are we ready? Are we ready to start reading? I certainly am. I'm just going to microwave my coffee, my tea. And then we will begin, because chapter 2 ended with the thunderstorm and lightning striking the tree and Bess screaming that the tree is falling. And it was right after they spotted the castle. So I'm so excited. Just going to do a quick microwave of my tea and then we'll begin. 4. Hello, 4 people. Whoops. Don't put the spoon in the microwave. Venting prevents explosion. Who says this? Who says this? Venting prevents explosion. Science. Commencing countdown, engines on. Ooh, that's the scariest song ever. Do you guys have songs that you find scary? I do. I mean, I've heard that one so much that I'm desensitized to it, but the first time I heard Space Oddity, I don't know, I guess I was a little kid, and the video that goes with it, oh, I get creeped out by space stuff, but I also love it. I gotta cut my nails because they keep getting caught on things like my hair. It says, ouch, I think this is burning. It's good. So let's read just the end, the little end bits of chapter 2. So they've just spotted the castle in the distance, and they're all like, whoa, man. And then a strong gust of wind suddenly blew their skirts. It's going to rain, said Bess. We'd better go inside. As they started back, the girls passed a huge oak tree. At that instant, a bolt of lightning ran down one side of the trunk. A terrific cracking noise followed. The ground vibrated, giving Nancy and her friends a tingling sensation. The tree's going to fall, Bess screamed. Is it? You get annoyed by those cliffhangers like Annie Wilkes mentions in Misery. Like the dude was going over a cliff in a car or something, and it ended, and when they went to see it again, he wasn't in the cock-a-doodle car. So let's see what happens here. Checking the time so I can do a timestamp. Okay. Chapter 3, A Strange Inquiry. There was a tremendous crash behind the girls. The great oak had split in two, the outermost branches of the falling section barely missing Nancy and her friends. Hypers! That was a narrow escape, said George, catching her breath. I feel numb. 2 hypers. Remember, yesterday we had our first hypers. George cried hypers in disgust. Now she's crying hypers, like, whoa, hypers. So somebody write that down. Hypers count 2. Hypers! That was a narrow escape, said George, catching her breath. I feel numb. So do I, said Nancy. It's a good thing we weren't any closer to that bolt. We might have been struck. I'm a wreck, Bess declared. She kept on going, however, toward the motel. As the 3... Hi, Bob Bobber! I like your name. As the 3 girls rushed inside, there was a bright flash of lightning. It was followed by a deafening roar of thunder. There's no rain, said Bess, quavering. What's the matter? Nancy answered her. I guess this is what's known as a dry storm. They're the worst kind. In a few moments, however, it began to rain. The curtain of water was so thick that no one could see more than 10 feet ahead through the windows. Oh, that one could not see more than 10 feet ahead through the windows. As they watched the storm, Mrs. Thompson came to the girls' room to inquire if they were all right. Nancy assured her that they were, but confessed that the bolt of lightning and the crashing tree had given them a scare. I'm terribly sorry your lovely oak is ruined, she said sympathetically. I'm sorry, too, the motel owner replied. But the ruined side is away from the motel. Perhaps the tree surgeon can fix it up so that it won't be too noticeable. Do you often have storms like this? Bess asked. Mrs. Thompson said it was the first one since she had taken over the management of the motel. But then I'm new to the community. I've been here less than a year. Good morning or afternoon. How your day go? How's your day going? It's just starting. It's before 9 here. I'm not sure. Or it's almost 9. Eastern Standard Time. Tree surgeon. I think it would be more fun to be a tree surgeon than a real surgeon. I don't like hanging out in hospitals. You get to hang out in nature all day and hope that a tree won't fall on you. I'm new to the community. I've been here less than a year. Then perhaps you don't know much about the castle I saw down in the valley, Nancy remarked. It looks like an intriguing place. Mrs. Thompson smiled. I have no doubt it is. Since I came here, I've been so busy that I haven't had time to learn much of the local history. But, she paused a moment, her eyes twinkling. I suggest that if you want to learn about you want to learn anything about Deep River or Deep River Valley, you talk with Mrs. Hempstead. She's the mother of the owner of the tea room downtown called the Brass Kettle. Brass Kettle. Isn't the Brass Kettle, isn't that the restaurant in a Nancy Drew game? Danger on Deception Island. One of my favorites. Because it's like she eats clam chowder and she goes on the water and it's on the coast. It's a fun game. I like the music. It's all nautical. Brass Kettle, isn't that where she goes and it's all like wooden and stuff, and she meets that guy and she eats clam chowder. Maybe not. My mouth is, how some teas are very drying? This is very drying. Right. If you want to learn anything about Deep River Valley, go talk to Mrs. Hempstead. She's the mother of the owner of the tea room downtown called the Brass Kettle. The three girls laughed and George remarked, You mean she's the town busybody? I guess that's a good name for her, Mrs. Thompson answered. She prides herself on not missing a thing that's going on. She sounds like Mrs. Rachel Lynde from Anne of Green Gables. A busybody. Oh, I don't like busybodies. Deep down, Mrs. Lynde, I guess, has a good heart, but she's insufferable. I wonder if Mrs. Hempstead is insufferable. Nancy was listening intently. Here was somebody who might know something about Mrs. Horton's grandchild. Let's have supper at the Brass Kettle, she said to the girls, who realized the significance of her suggestion. To me, the Brass Kettle sounds like a really cozy, but, restaurant kind of place where you eat a lot, more so than a tea room. Clam chowder is mentioned a few times as it's set in the East Coast. Clam chowder in this book? Awesome. Beautiful. Wonderful. They waited until the rain had stopped, then left for the quaint village. Nancy drove the full length of Main Street, looking left and right for the Brass Kettle. Not seeing it, she turned around and started back, remarking, The tea room must be on a side street. As they rode along, pausing at each cross street, Nancy noted the lettering on 2 different office windows. Both offices were occupied by attorneys. I wonder if one of them was the lawyer who settled the Horton estate, and if so, whether he has returned from his vacation, Nancy mused. She also noted that there were 2 banks and made up her mind to visit all 4 places the next day and find out what she could. Suddenly, George called out, "I see the tea room. Stop! Turn to the right." Kettles equals witches. Really? Brass witch? Or you mean the tea room ladies are witches? Cauldrons. The Black Cauldron. Isn't that a Disney movie? That is not as known or something? I don't know. Nancy backed up, then drove down the side street. The brass kettle was 2 doors from the corner. The place was attractive. In front of the old-fashioned white house was with a center entrance was a lovely garden of flowers, enclosed by a white picket fence. I'm picturing it. Are you picturing it? It's so lovely. I want to spend the day in Deep River. The girls entered the restaurant. The interior was just as quaint and attractive as the exterior. On the left of the center hall was a waiting room with a high-backed sofa and straight chairs. Several hanging shelves with knickknacks decorated the walls. Over the fireplace, in an elegant gilt frame, was the portrait of a distinguished-looking elderly man with white hair and a long beard. Velvet carpet with a large flower design blended perfectly with the other furnishings. Oh, sounds really nice. Like, I want to stay there all day. Black Cauldron was a huge flop. Okay, like I don't remember it when it came out, but I think I downloaded it a few years ago when I was downloading some Disney movies, and it sounded interesting. I don't know if I even watched it or anything. I like the Sword in the Stone. I love the animation style of that one. I don't even remember like all the characters and story, just the look of it. Nancy and her friends noted all this in a quick glance. Their attention focused on an old lady seated in an antique rocker. Her black silk dress was severe, and the neckline edged in ruching. Talking to her was a short, stout man, his back to the girls. Is she a witch? As the girls paused, they heard the old lady say to him in a high-pitched voice, "The name's Drew, you say? I'll let you know." Bess and George each grabbed one of Nancy's arms. Did the stranger perhaps mean Nancy or her father? Instantly, Nancy decided it might be wise to stay out of sight. Pulling the girls to one side, she whispered, "I'll go back into a corner of the tea room. Find out what you can, and if you have to give names, just use your own. Don't mention mine or let on I'm here." Ooh. In the dog in the Black Cauldron? I don't remember it. I think I just put it on and then turned it off, or I wasn't paying attention. Nancy hurried around the corner of the doorway and found a table well hidden from the waiting room. Let me start that again. Nancy hurried around the corner of the doorway and found a table well hidden from the waiting room. Meanwhile, Bess and George dawdled in the hall, hoping to hear more and to get a good look at the man. Eventually, he moved into view. These people sound scary. She's a witch and he's a stout little man. I'm thinking of the gnome people in tolling bell. Are these people human? Bess rearranged her hair several times, then took out a compact and spent a few moments powdering her nose. George, whose hair was short and close cut, found it difficult to change her hairstyle, so she too powdered her nose. Then she pretended to be having difficulty brushing some imaginary dirt off her blouse. Suddenly, the man said to the elderly woman, I must meet Miss Drew. I have something very valuable to give her. How should he sound? I don't know. When I'm recording, I have time to try out a few different voices. This guy either has a deep voice or like a little munchkin voice. Do you want him to have a munchkin voice or a deep voice? He's a stout little man. Please choose his voice. Should he say, I must meet Miss Drew. I have something very valuable to give her. Or, I must meet Miss Drew. I have something very valuable to give her. Please choose a voice for him. Bess jumped. It might be a gift for Nancy. Very good, Mr. Seaman, the woman replied. Bess whispered to George, we ought to call Nancy and let him give her this valuable thing if she's the right Drew. No, George said in a low but firm voice. If he means Nancy, I don't believe there's any gift. Bess, you go in with Nancy and tell her what happened. I'm going to follow that man and see what I can find out. Her cousin demurred for a moment, but George was insistent. Don't worry. I'll be careful, she promised. I'll just see where he goes. Satisfied, Bess turned into the tea room and walked to the table where Nancy was seated. As Mr. Seaman said, Goodbye, Mrs. Hempstead. I'll be seeing you. I like the Munchkin voice better. As Mr. Seaman said, Goodbye, Miss Hempstead. I'll be seeing you. George turned her back to the waiting room and put her head down as if searching for something in her purse. The man came out and immediately left the restaurant. George followed. The stranger walked up Main Street, block after block. His pace quickened. So did George's. Where in the world is he going? She asked herself. I wonder if he knows I'm following him and is trying to throw me off the track. Nevertheless, she strode on determinedly. Finally, at the very edge of town, she noticed a parked car. As the man approached it, the door swung open and he jumped inside. Instantly, the automobile drove off. Where's he off to? George was not close enough to do any more than get the license number of the dark car and note that the driver was a woman. It was too dark to distinguish anything about her. The young sleuth turned back. At the tea room, Nancy and Bess ordered their supper. They ate slowly, thinking George would return at any moment. They finished eating and still George had not returned. Both girls became alarmed. What could have happened to George? I want to know what they ordered. Come on. We get to hear all about what the tea room looks like, but we don't get to hear what they ordered. I don't like that. I never should have let her go alone, Bess chided herself. George takes such wild chances. Goodness only knows what she may have gotten into. Nancy was afraid that Mr. Seaman, thinking George was following him and not wishing to be found out, might have harmed her. George may be a prisoner this very minute, Bess said fearfully. Though Nancy agreed, she remarked, George knows how to take care of herself. Just the same, I think we should go look for her. The girls quickly paid their checks and left the tea room. They looked up and down the side street, then walked to Main Street. George was not in sight. That Mr. Seaman may have been the man who phoned the Bowens, Bess said. She was almost in tears. Maybe they in danger and That Mr. Seaman may have been the man who phoned the Bowens, Bess said. She was almost in tears. Maybe that threatened danger is already in progress. As the girls wandered aimlessly along the street, a little boy who had been playing on the sidewalk smiled at them. Nancy returned his smile and said, We're looking for a friend of ours, she explained, then described George. Did you see a girl like that anywhere around? Oh, yes, the little boy answered. He pointed. She went that way. Sorry, my voice just went cuckoo. She went that way. With this slim clue, Nancy and Bess hurried in the direction the little boy had indicated. They came to the end of town, but their search had yielded nothing. Discouraged, they turned back. Oh, I just know George has been kidnapped, Bess moaned in panic. End of chapter 3. Oh, goodness. Do you think George has been kidnapped? I hope not. Whew, so much happening. The next chapter, chapter 4, is called, it sounds promising, Nancy's Impersonation. Who's she going to pretend to be? I don't know. I have to fix my tea. So can I put something in front of this for you to look at? Can you see things? You want to look at the poodle card? That doesn't work. I'll be back with chapter 4 and more tea. I'll try not to be too long. I'm just over here. Talk amongst yourselves. Talk about what you think is going to happen. I'm hungry. I'm putting a different tea bag in. This one is not working for me. Mint tea. That'll do. Oh, it smells so good. Who loves mint? Who here loves mint? Oh, you know something? You open something and it's really minty. Like my favorite Lifesavers. The bag's in the garbage because it's all empty. My favorite Lifesavers are the Winto green ones. You open the bag and it's like peppermint. I open this tea and it's like peppermint. Pure peppermint. I also have this peppermint oil. It's for cooking. Sometimes I put it in my drinks, or sometimes I actually put it on my skin because it's just like natural oils, although it's meant for baking. Because I love the smell. I put the cover in too tight, and now I got so excited about peppermint, I turned into the Incredible Peppermint Hulk. Actually, I'm going to take one from deeper down. I feel like it's more, I'm taking one from the middle. I feel like it will be more pepperminty. Who likes peppermint? Whoa. All right. There's still a bit of jasmine in there. That sounds okay. Jasmine and peppermint. Loving this book. I don't think Digby's here, but he's the one who said, oh, that's my favorite, or his second favorite. So I said, well, why don't we read that one next? And I'm glad. I mean, I forgot what I was going to say. There's a picture in the next chapter, you guys. Isn't there? Oh, I'm sorry. There isn't. I thought there was. I lied. I thought there was a picture in the next chapter. That's really weird. Okay, no, there's like this many more pages before a picture. I thought that it was coming up. It's a good picture too. Chapter 4, Nancy's impersonation. I never should have given you girls that assignment, Nancy said. If something has happened to George, I can't forgive myself. Bess was in tears. She and George had many little misunderstandings and sometimes found fault with each other, but the two girls were very close. The thought that George might be a prisoner was almost too much for Beth. We must find her, she said, a catch in her voice. If we don't get a lead on George in a few minutes, we'll tell the police. Nancy agreed. Let's go back to the tea room and find out from Mrs. Hempstead where Mr. Seaman lives. Then we'll go right to his house. As the girls hurried along, Nancy added, Bess, I'd still like to keep my identity here a secret. Do you remember the play I was in where I took the part of the shy girl with the high-pitched voice named Irene Innsbruck? I'll never forget it, said Bess. Sounds interesting. Shy girl with a high-pitched voice. Ooh. Well, I'm going to become Irene while I'm doing my sleuthing here, Nancy announced. Oh boy. For the whole book? When the girls reached the tea room, it was about to close. Mrs. Hempstead still sat in her rocker, swaying gently back and forth and humming a hymn. She's a church lady. She's not a witch. She's a church lady. Despite the gravity of the situation, Bess could hardly keep her face straight as Nancy introduced herself in a voice pitched almost an octave higher than her normal one. Then she asked, sorry, I'm having voice problems myself. Germs all up in this book. I don't know what octaves are. I mean, I don't know how to do octaves. Do I look like Mariah Carey? Sometimes I try to do the whistle note like Mariah Carey. People ask me if I'm distressed, if I need assistance. I'm just kidding. I do try to do the whistle note, but nobody does anything about it. Nancy introduced herself in a voice pitched almost an octave higher than her normal one. Then she asked, I understand you know most everyone in town. Could you tell me where Mr. Seaman lives? Did that sound shy? Mrs. Hempstead leaned forward and gave a little chuckle. Are you his girlfriend? She asked, as if she were latching onto a possible bit of gossip. Nancy did not have a chance to answer Mrs. Hempstead, presuming I can't see punctuation. Nancy did not have a chance to answer. Mrs. Hempstead, presuming this was the case, prattled on. Nice man, Mr. Seaman. Reliable like. She winked. That's the kind of man a girl ought to have for a husband. In the pause that followed, Bess felt she should say something to carry on the pretext. Mr. Seaman really ought to reduce. Irene prefers thin men. This is funny. Mrs. Hempstead laughed aloud and turned to Nancy. After you're married to him, you can put him on a diet, she said, giving Nancy another wink. Nancy, playing the game, laughed too. Right now, I'm only interested in learning where his house is. He never said. Well, now, I can't tell you that, the old lady said. It's somewhere out of town, but he never told me where it is. Nancy showed her disappointment. She changed the subject abruptly. Mrs. Hempstead, do you think I'd like it here in Deep River? I don't see why not. I've lived here all my life, and look at me. Hale and hearty yet. What does that mean? Hale, H-A-L-E. Hale and hearty yet. I'm not sure what that word means. If you know what that word means, please tell me. The impersonator acted unconvinced. I've heard some queer things have happened in this town, she said. Oh, it's not bad, Mrs. Hempstead shrugged. Of course. There were a few moments of silence. Then the old woman brightened, sat up straight, and rocked back and forth furiously. Of course, there's the castle. Too bad it was abandoned. It was once a beautiful place. The show place of Deep River 50 years ago. This is hard. This is hard, the voices. It says, who owned it? Nancy queried in her Irene high-pitched voice, which almost matched the tone of Mrs. Hempstead. I don't know how to do this. It's too hard. There's too many rules about how to read, how you should sound. I'm just going to read it. Who owned it? Nancy queried in her Irene high-pitched voice, which almost matched the tone of Mrs. Hempstead. Some foreigners built it and lived there until it became haunted, Mrs. Hempstead answered. Haunted? Bess repeated. I'll say it was, Mrs. Hempstead replied. The folks never finished building the castle. It was to have another turret, and finally abandoned it. There was one tragedy after another. A child drowned in the moat. A man got hoisted on the drawbridge and was crushed. Oh, please, said Bess. Don't tell us any more. Mrs. Hempstead was not to be stopped. She said that no one had lived in the castle for many years, but the taxes on it were paid by someone living in Europe. So the town can't do anything with the place. The county can't do anything with it either. The state police took it over once in a while. The state police look it over once in a while to see that everything is in order out there. Mrs. Hempstead suddenly pointed to an ancient framed map hanging on the wall. "Look at that," she directed. "If you'll look close, you'll see that deep river valley." I can't say Deep River Valley. That's like the fourth time I'm saying Deep Riller Valley. "If you look close, you'll see that Deep River Valley was originally Moonstone Valley. Nobody seems to know why the name was changed. I guess the people who lived in the castle knew this and liked the name because they called their place Moonstone Castle." At this bit of information, Nancy and Bess looked at each other. This was the second time in 2 days that moonstones had come to their attention. Was there any connection between Moonstone Castle and the gem which had been sent so mysteriously to Nancy? "Speaking of queer things," Mrs. Hempstead said reminiscently, "there's the case of Mrs. Horton." Nancy and Bess could hardly conceal their excitement. "Horton?" Nancy repeated. "Yes," said Mrs. Hempstead. "Her place was quite far out of town. She never was sociable, so folks around here didn't know her very well. She never mingled much, and after her son and daughter-in-law died, nobody ever saw or heard from her again until just before her death." "What happened to her?" asked Nancy. "Well, it was just like this," Mrs. Hempstead related. "Just at the time her son died, a couple of servants she had went off suddenly, and a new couple came there. After that, food was always delivered to the house, but the money for it was left outside. The tradespeople who went out there never saw anybody. Talk got around that Mrs. Horton had become queer." Sorry. I'm sorry. My apologies. Talk got around that Mrs. Horton had become queer. Personally, I don't know who was the queerest, Mrs. Horton or those servants she had. Why, do you know, at the time of her last illness, they actually called in an out-of-town doctor, and when she died, the servants sent for an out-of-town undertaker? And what was even worse, the funeral was private. Not a soul in this town knew about it until it was over. Nancy and Bess did not comment. Numerous questions raced through their minds. Bess, impulsively, suddenly blurted out, "What happened to the little grandchild who was staying with Mrs. Horton?" "Oh, Bess." The instant she had asked the question, Bess was sorry. To her and Nancy's relief, however, the old lady did not seem to think the question was out of order. "Little grandchild," she remarked. "If Mrs. Horton's son had a little child, nobody around here knew it." The woman chuckled. "You can bet your life if any child was out there, I would have heard about it." "I don't doubt it, Mrs. Hempstead." Tough one for voices. When they tell you exactly how someone's supposed to sound, I try to sound that way, and it's hard. The two girls made no comment, for at that moment, Mrs. Hempstead's daughter came into the room. "Mother," she said, "it's time for bed. You've had quite a day." Nancy and Bess left at once. They realized they should continue their search for George. Yeah, it's like we completely forgot about George here. When they reached the street, they turned in the direction where they had seen police headquarters. Their hearts and minds full of worry, the two girls hurried along in silence. As they passed a well-lighted soda shop, crowded with young people, they suddenly heard a familiar whistle. George was signaling to them from inside the shop. "Oh, thank goodness," said Bess in relief. Nancy felt that a great weight had been lifted from her as she and Bess hurried inside. "Well, thank goodness." "You've given us the worst scare of our lives. What?" Bess started to scold her cousin. "I was just going to phone the tea room to tell you where I was when I saw you coming," George told the girls. "Come sit down with me while I finish eating, and I'll tell you everything that happened." They listened attentively to her account of trailing Mr. Seaman and his going off in a car driven by a woman. Oh, my voice is a kind of shot for some reason. I should learn how to take care of my voice because I really don't know. So that I can talk longer without straining myself. I don't know how to do vocal exercises or anything like that. I'm sure it would be helpful. I started back to town. Halfway here, I was sure a man was trailing me. By this time, it was too dark to see him very well, but he wasn't the man I followed from the brass kettle. "What did he look like?" Bess asked. "He was very thin. In fact, I think he was the same man who was following you in River Heights, Nancy," said George. Suddenly, she looked out the window and cried, "There he goes now! Look!" Nancy and Bess dashed to the window as the man hurried up the street. "That man looks familiar to me," Nancy said excitedly. End of chapter 4. That chapter wore me out with Mrs. Hempstead and Irene Innsbruck. That was a very intense chapter of reading. But I'm glad George wasn't kidnapped. Are we getting closer to the picture? No, it's going to be a while before we get to the picture. The picture is in chapter... The picture's in chapter 6. It's not that far away, but it seems far away. Hi, who's here? Bob Bobber, are you still there? Bob Bobber. Now, how do I say your name again? Sowada? Sowada? You have a suit that looks like Waffles O'Toole. Sowada. Ooh, guess what chapter 5 is called? The Spooky Drawbridge. Don't mind me, I'm just going to smell stuff. Geranium. I got to get some plants. I need to be surrounded by good smells. Oh yeah, this is supposed to be firming for the skin. Geranium. So I put it down here on my chins. You guys use any oils or like nice smelling stuff on your skin or in your hair, in your real hair? My voice is a little bit. Remind me to look up some vocal exercises or like things that I can do to make my voice last longer. I know that I don't breathe well. I'm a shallow breather. I used to smoke, and I think, well, when did I quit? 14 years ago, I quit smoking. So it's been a long time, but I still think I don't breathe as well as I should. Like taking deep breaths. I breathe like a dog. Have there been any animals in this yet? Nope. Our last book was rife with animals. There were sheep, there were sheepdogs, there was Togo, there were fake birds. I was really surprised when I found out that those birds weren't real and they didn't know. They must have been quite impressive. All right, here we go with chapter 5, The Spooky Drawbridge. It's the same guy from the beginning, from that double picture. They've already discussed him, and George is like, do you know that man? Tawata. Tawata. Okay. Tawata? Lead me to water. I'm thirsty. Please lead me to water. Chapter 5, The Spooky Drawbridge. Do you know that man? George queried. Nancy thought hard but could not remember who he was. Isn't this the guy from the beginning of the book? Why are they acting like they've never seen him before? His face certainly does look familiar. Maybe it will come to me later. Let's follow him and see if we can find out who he is. George's meal was quickly paid for, and the girls hurried to the street. We didn't get to hear what George ate either. There better be some food in this book. The stranger for whom they were searching was nowhere in sight. The young sleuths peered into various shops that were still open and looked up and down cross streets. The man had vanished. Well, we may as well go home, said Nancy. I confess I'm ready for bed. Me too, said Bess, yawning. On the way back to the motel, Nancy said she would like to visit the castle early the next morning. That place intrigues me. It probably holds a mystery. I thought we were trying to find Joni Horton, Bess spoke up. Don't tell me you think she's being hidden in the castle. Nancy laughed. No, not after all those years. I suggest we go to the castle before breakfast. Then we can start our sleuthing at the banks and those lawyers' offices. With breakfast in between? The three friends were up early. On the way to the parking area, they stopped to gaze at the view of the valley. The sun was not very high yet, and sections beneath the hills were in deep shadow. The castle, however, stood out clearly. Suddenly, Nancy called out excitedly, "Girls, the drawbridge is down now." "But the place is supposed to be empty," Bess said. "It's positively spooky." The others agreed and stared at the spot, puzzled. Why was the bridge in this position? Who had lowered it? Maybe it just fell, Nancy suggested. Could be, George said. Or maybe some sightseers were there, walked over the dry moat, and then let the drawbridge down so they could go back across it. It's a logical explanation, Nancy agreed. Well, shall we go? The girls climbed into Nancy's convertible, and she wound down the hillside to the town. Not many people were in evidence in Deep River, and the visitors knew the restaurants would not be open yet. I want to go eat breakfast. Have you guys eaten breakfast? Wherever you are? I really want to go eat breakfast. But I'll just eat here. I gotta get more nuts for the squirrels. So we're off to see the Moonstone Castle. I know I'm going to be famished before we get back, Bess declared. It won't hurt you, said George, surveying Bess's plump figure. Bess made a face but did not retort. She sat in silence as Nancy covered mile after mile. I had no idea the castle was so far from the business district, she remarked. Finally, they reached the grass-overgrown lane which led into the property. Tire tracks, George pointed out. Somebody has been here recently. Nancy parked at the side of the lane, some distance from the moat. The tracks of the other car went on to the drawbridge. I think we'd better proceed on foot, she said. The girls alighted and walked forward. I'm glad the bridge is down, said Bess. I'd hate to plod deep into that moat and up again on the other side. Suddenly Nancy, who was in the lead, cried out, There's water in the moat, a lot of it. The cousins hurried forward to look over the edge with Nancy. It looks deep, too, she added. It's not just rainwater. Bess was fearful. Who put it in if nobody's living here? Nancy admitted that she was puzzled but was eager to continue the trek over to the castle itself. Before the girls could start, the bridge began to rise. Ah, they're going to get stuck. Thanks, Bob. I'm having some voice issues and I'm not sure I'm completely awake because I've never done it in the morning, but trying my best. Okay, battery's good. Are they going to get crushed? Didn't Mrs. Hempstead say that somebody got crushed up in the drawbridge? Before the girls could start, the bridge began to rise. Oh, Bess screamed. The castle is haunted. A ghost must be raising the drawbridge. Don't be silly, George scolded her. The townspeople and the police may think this place is unoccupied, but it's my guess somebody is hiding here. Nancy, who long ago had made it a rule never to side with either of the cousins when they were disagreeing, said, One thing is sure. If we expect to get across now, we'll have to swim. Let's go back to town, have breakfast, do our calling at the banks and lawyers, then come back here wearing our bathing suits. Oh my God, this is getting so funny and silly. They're going to put on their bathing suits and swim across. Bess did not comment on the suggestion, but it was evident from the expression on her face that she did not relish the adventure. As they walked to the car, the three friends kept turning around to see if they could catch a glimpse of anyone on the castle grounds. Nobody appeared. The place seemed to be deserted. I wonder if more than one person is. I can't say person. My last boss was a witch. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to hear that. I hope your current one is better. I wonder if more than one person is hiding at the castle, said Nancy. George remarked that there must be more than one person. The bridge had been let down for a car to go over, and someone inside the castle walls apparently had pulled up the drawbridge. Oh dear, said Bess. This is getting terribly complicated. Why don't we leave the castle out of our sleuthing? The other girls did not answer her. Both Nancy and George were curious to see what was going on in the abandoned spot. Why had water been put into the moat, and by whom? Had it been done to keep people out of the castle? Is there a dragon, too? I want to hear some food action. Hi, Digby. We're on to our third chapter of the morning. You missed a lot. We are going back to the brass kettle. We're going to have some breakfast. We're going to get our we're going to visit the banks and the lawyers. Then we're going to put on our bathing suits and swim across the moat. Bess is not looking forward to that. I slept in today. I got up early. Well, I don't want to go on and on, but I wake up many times during the night, so I never sleep well. But I'm like up and doing stuff right now. Reading to you guys. And it's fun. Look how far in we are. We're on chapter 5. And there's a fun picture coming up in chapter 6. And we'll see it soon, maybe. What just happened? As soon as the girls reached Deep River, they went to the brass kettle, but it was not open. They turned around and walked back to the main street and entered a modern diner. Their breakfast proved to be delicious, and Bess's good humor returned. We've had 3 meals. Bess and Nancy ate at the brass kettle. We didn't hear what they ate. George ate at a soda shop. We didn't hear what she ate. And they just had breakfast at the brass kettle, but we didn't get to hear what the food was. I'm disappointed in that regard. The food in this book is non-existent. Bess's good humor returned. By the time the girls had finished eating, the stores and offices were open. Nancy headed for the Deep River National Bank. Bess and George were always interested in observing Nancy's sleuthing procedures. They often wondered whether it was her charm, her straightforward manner, or her businesslike approach that unfailingly gained her entrance to offices of officials. Now, with little explanation on her part, the girls were ushered into the president's office. Mr. Cleet was a pleasant man, but one who repeatedly was interrupted by telephone calls and messengers. He listened attentively, however, to Nancy's request for information about the deceased Mrs. Adelaide Horton. I'm afraid there is little I can tell you, the man replied. I knew Mrs. Horton only slightly. One day she came in and closed out both her checking and her savings accounts. Then she went to her safe deposit box and removed the contents. Apparently securities. She gave no explanation? Nancy asked. None whatever. She was not a talkative person. Furthermore, we never question what our clients do. Of course, we were sorry to lose her accounts. How long ago was it? Nancy queried. Mr. Cleet thought for a few moments, then said, I can't remember exactly how many years ago, but it was a few months before her death. At that moment, Mr. Cleet's buzzer sounded. He answered and said, All right, put him on. The president turned to the girls. I'm sorry, but you'll have to excuse me now. I have an important long-distance call. Nancy arose hastily and thanked him. She hurried from the room, followed by Bess and George. When they reached the sidewalk, George asked, Nancy, do you think that you have learned anything important? Indeed, I do. I've had a feeling all along that something strange was happening between Mrs. Horton and the couple who worked for her. I'm beginning to think that maybe the servants were using some hypnotic influence over Mrs. Horton to get her money and securities away from her. How perfectly dreadful, Bess commented. Ooh, I like this. Hypnotic influence. Ooh, we're getting a little supernatural. Are they witches? All of them witches. It would be fun to read Rosemary's Baby on live because it's not a long book. I thought of witches and it makes me think of Rosemary's Baby. Would anyone love to read Rosemary's Baby? Perfectly dreadful, Bess commented. Nancy walked up the street, telling the girls she was going to visit the other bank in town. At this institution, the girl detective was told a similar story to the one she had just heard. But the information came from the head cashier. He was the only person who had been working at the bank 15 years before. This man was a little more talkative and revealed the fact that Mrs. Horton was considered to be wealthy. I believe she left everything to a granddaughter, he said, but the details have slipped my memory. Nancy was sorry to hear this, because for a moment she had hoped that the man would supply a helpful clue. He smiled. Mrs. Horton never talked about her personal affairs to anyone. She didn't seem to want a soul to know her business. Nancy, realizing that the cashier could throw no further light on the mystery, thanked him and the girls left the bank. Their next stop was at one of the law offices. Here, the young sleuths learned nothing. The two lawyers who shared the office had been in town less than 5 years and had never heard of Mrs. Horton. I'd be down for you reading some Ira Levin. It would be fun. I like that it's a short book. And I've seen the movie. I read the book once or twice, but I've seen the movie bazillions of times. So it won't be new to me. It's very familiar to me, so that might help with my reading. At the next attorney's, Nancy had a little better luck. The man had heard of Mrs. Horton, and although he knew nothing about her personally, he said, I believe a Mr. John Wheeler, who is now retired, took care of her estate. Does he live in town? Nancy asked eagerly. Yes, on Victoria Street. I don't know the number of the house, but you can't miss it. On the front lawn, there's a huge statue of a dog. Oh, that sounds fun. I wonder if there's a real dog, too. As the girls hurried toward Mr. Wheeler's home, Nancy wondered if this was the man to whom her father had referred and who was reported to be out of town. She fervently hoped he was back. To her delight, Mr. Wheeler had returned, and he welcomed the girls cordially. He was about 70 years old, but very spry looking. It's rare that even one young lady comes to call on me, he said with a lilt in his voice. To have all three at once, and such attractive ones, is a great pleasure indeed. Do come in and sit down. The girls seated themselves in the spacious, beautifully furnished living room. Nancy apologized for the intrusion, then introduced herself as the daughter of Carson Drew, the attorney. I'd forgotten about Mr. Wheeler. Yeah, I think I might have stopped reading at this point when I was reading it on the Kindle. I believe you settled the estate of Mrs. Adelaide Horton, Nancy said questioningly. Yes, I did. Nancy said that her father had come to Deep River looking for Mr. Wheeler, but had learned he was out of town. My father had to take a business trip, so he asked me to come up here and make some inquiries. And what it is you what it is you want? And what is it you want to know? Mr. Wheeler asked, his voice now showing a note of suspicion. Ooh. And what is it you want to know? Mr. Wheeler asked, his voice now showing a note of suspicion. It's about Mrs. Horton's granddaughter, to whom she left her money. Well, Mr. Wheeler lifted his eyebrows. Everything was in order. Just before Mrs. Horton's death, she left a note giving the address of her granddaughter. The girl was notified and came here from New York City. Her lawyer accompanied her. She had full credentials to prove who she was. After a pause, Mr. Wheeler added, so she inherited Mrs. Horton's estate. That's all there is to the story. But she couldn't have, Bess blurted. She was only 3 years old. Mr. Wheeler smiled affably. Oh, no, he said. She was 21. Nancy, Bess, and George were stunned. Where is Joni Horton now? Nancy asked. I have no idea, the retired lawyer answered. Nancy's mind was in a whirl. If Mr. Wheeler's story were true, who were the Mr. and Mrs. Bowen that had come to Mr. Drew? Were they imposters? If so, what was their scheme? On the other hand, Nancy reflected, maybe a great hoax had been perpetrated and an impostor had received the estate. A similar thought went through George's mind. She asked abruptly, Mr. Wheeler, weren't you suspicious about that girl who claimed to be Joni Horton? The former lawyer's face instantly turned red, then almost purple. He jumped from his chair and in anger shouted, How dare you, young lady? The idea of questioning my integrity. I suggest that you and your friends leave at once. Whoa, is this guy bipolar or what? At first he was like, ooh, hot young chicks, come on in. And now he's like, don't ever talk to me again. Scoundrels. End of chapter 5. Whoa, yeah, what is up with Mr. Wheeler? Wheeler the dealer. That was a twist ending. That's right. Last book was Junie Flockhart. This one's Joni Horton. What is up with Mr. Wheeler? Okay, I'm looking forward to finding out what is up with Mr. Wheeler. He's crazy. Well, the next chapter has a picture in it. Actually, it's right at the end. End of chapter 6, and then the picture in chapter 7. No, yes, please, no spoilers about Wheeler. Wheeler the dealer, Wheeler the squealer, Wheeler the healer, Wheeler the feeler. Because at first he was like, ooh, pretty young girls. Wheeler the feeler. Merv the perv. I haven't had any coffee. I hear doggy. I wish I had a doggy. See, I get really annoyed by people sounds outside, but when I hear animal sounds, like dogs barking, doesn't bother me. I guess I'm a nature girl. Wheeler. I would love to read Rosemary's Baby. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Some of the reactions of older men in the Nancy Drew books haven't aged well. I know some ladies might be offended by it, but I'm an old-fashioned gal. I can take care of myself, and I'm not offended easily. I think it's nice. I mean, yes, there are some guys who are actual jerks, but I don't get offended when people, like, if a guy says, looks at me and thinks I'm hot. Thank you. I mean, I prefer that than like poor Uncle John in Pine Hill. Oh, yeah. He was a good guy. He was a good guy. But he liked having some young chicks staying in his house. And there's nothing wrong with that. He didn't do anything untoward. All right. I think I have to check out. Oh, I've been on 1 hour and 36 minutes. I think we can do one more chapter because I'm really looking forward to the swimming across the moat. And I do believe that's coming up in this next chapter. So that will have been, we will have done 3, 4, 5, and 6. Better to be thought hot than not. Yeah, unless you just want to be left alone. Or, yeah, I guess hot, not, or just not thought of at all. Sometimes that would be nice, like just pretend I'm invisible. Okay. Oh, wait. Oh, okay. Yeah, he's still there at the beginning of the next chapter. For some reason, I thought it would be a later time, but chapter 6 starts right at the same time. Chapter 6, A Legal Tangle. Why, Mr. Wheeler, I didn't mean, George broke in. Please forgive me. The retired lawyer, mollified by George's apology, took a deep breath. Perhaps I should explain. Oh, sorry. That was Nancy who says that. I thought it was going to be Mr. Horton. Perhaps I should explain, Nancy said. We heard that Mrs. Horton had a little grandchild staying with her, but no one in Deep River seems to know anything about her. Your story startled us. Mr. Wheeler finally calmed down. I will outline the circumstances, he said, seating himself again. When I was called in, Mrs. Horton was already dead. Only the doctor and the undertaker were there, but they showed me several notes left by her on a bedside table, along with a couple of signed checks. All were in the old woman's handwriting. One said the granddaughter mentioned in her will lived at a certain address in New York City. Another note said she desired a private funeral. A third requested that since Joan's parents were not living, I was to take charge of everything. Accordingly, I notified the granddaughter, who came here with a lawyer and a couple. They were friends. Joan had with her a birth certificate, a copy of the marriage license of her parents, and letters from her grandmother. The identification seemed bona fide. Bess inquired, the age of the grandchild and a guardian were not mentioned in the will? No, Mr. Wheeler answered. By the way, I did not draw the will. The lawyer who had and the witnesses who had signed it were not living. Was there a large estate? Nancy queried. The retired lawyer said there had been very little cash in Mrs. Horton's home safe, but he had found many securities there. All of them were transferred to Joan, he explained. After she left the Horton house, I never heard from her again. Did she sell the property? George spoke up. Yes, it was purchased by neighbors, but it has since been sold to other people. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to lose my voice. Seriously, remind me to look up some voice stuff. It has since been sold to other people. What was the name of the couple who worked for Mrs. Horton just before her death? Nancy asked. Mr. Wheeler said he did not know. All this time, Nancy had been studying the elderly man's face. It was an enigma to her. Was he completely honest, or was he involved in a crooked deal regarding the will? George asked, those notes you were given, could they possibly have been forgeries? The retired lawyer, instead of becoming angry over the question, looked troubled. I most certainly hope not, he said. Did you keep the notes? Nancy asked. No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I laid them down at the Horton house and they disappeared. I assumed someone had thrown them away, thinking they were no longer of any use. Nancy stood up. She felt that the girls had gleaned all the information possible from Mr. Wheeler, who appeared genuinely upset. I'm sorry we disturbed you, said Nancy. Thank you very much for this information. I'll pass it along to my dad. Probably he will be in touch with you when he returns home. Bess and George said goodbye, but Mr. Wheeler did not rise. He seemed stunned, and his thoughts far away. Nancy wished she were a mind reader. Had Mr. Wheeler told all the facts? The girls let themselves out the front door and started for the car. That was really something, wasn't it? Bess remarked. We didn't get a description of the dog statue. I feel like the dog statue is relevant somehow. A lawyer throwing away papers related to a case. Oh, Mr. Wheeler, what have you done? I don't know who was more stunned, Mr. Wheeler or me, said Nancy. Do you realize what this means, girls? If this whole thing was a grand hoax and someone got away with Mrs. Horton's estate, there's no chance of the real Joni Hortons getting it, or even of being found. And don't forget, Bess added, that we haven't learned one single thing about the 3-year-old child named Joni Horton. It looks as if she never existed. I'm confused. Wait a minute. Are there two Joans? There's a Joan and a Joni? Or is there just one little girl who actually wasn't a little girl? Oh, Bess, I'm confused. Bess and I are confused. We just want to eat and look at boys and not go swimming across a moat. It sure is a mystery, said George, as the girls climbed into the car. After lunch, they returned to the motel. Wonder what they had for lunch. Nancy went at once to the telephone and tried to call her father. She learned, however, that he had left the San Francisco hotel, but was expected back in a few days. Nancy next called Hannah Gruen. When the housekeeper heard the latest developments in the case, she was alarmed by the news. There may be more danger in this mystery than you bargained for, Nancy, she said. If your father should phone, I'll give him your message and I'm sure he'll get in touch with you. The kindly woman begged Nancy to use extreme caution as she proceeded in her sleuthing. Don't forget, Nancy reminded her with a chuckle, that the Moonstone I brought is supposed to bring me good luck. Moonstone, bah, Mrs. Gruen said. Use your common sense and you'll be better off. Older Joan was an imposter. Young Joni is the rightful heir. Okay. As Nancy said goodbye, Bess came up to her and announced she would like to offer a suggestion. Don't you think you ought to get in touch with the Bowens and tell them the whole story? Nancy shook her head. I'll call them, but I won't tell them what we've learned. It's possible that they may be the phonies. I'm sure I can't imagine what their game would be after all these years, but Dad says never take anything for granted. I think we should try to learn the truth in this case before telling them anything more. But I do want to ask them a question. Nancy put in the call to the couple who were staying in New York City. She told them she had nothing to report, but thought they themselves might get a clue to their missing grandchild through the organization which had sent them to Africa as missionaries. Surely it would have notified Mrs. Horton of their capture. What was the name of the group? She asked. The Shirley Missionaries. Mr. Bowen said it was the African Brotherhood Society of New York. Unfortunately, the society has been out of existence several years, so there are no contacts in that direction. That's too bad, said Nancy, who realized it would be very difficult to trace anyone who had been in the organization 15 years before. Well, I'll say goodbye now. If I learn anything worthwhile, I'll get in touch with you. George joined the other girls, and they discussed the case from every angle. Nancy gave a great sigh. I think the best thing for me to do right now is clear my brain of the Horton case for a while. Bess giggled. How do you propose to do that? By taking a swim. Shall we get ready to go back to the castle? I'd like to find out if anyone is staying there illegally, and if such a person has anything to do with our case. Let's go, said George. Bess was silent. Finally, she confessed, Nancy, while you were telephoning, an absolute dream boy here at the motel asked me to play tennis. She looked off into the distance. But I'll go with you, she added. Nancy and George began to laugh. Like fun, you will, said George. You just can't wait to get out on the court with that boy. You know, said Nancy, it might not be a bad idea. It might fool any inquisitive people if Bess doesn't act as if she were at Longview just as a detective. You go ahead, Bess, and play tennis. If George and I aren't back in 3 hours, then suppose you and Whoozy Whatsus come after us. Bess blinked and flung up her head. I don't understand that. Okay, but his name's Alan Ryder, she retorted. George sniffed. Better be sure, dear cuz, that he is not one of the Seaman gang. Bess stamped her foot furiously. George Fane, there are times when I could pull your hair right out by the roots. She stalked off. Giggling, Nancy and George went to their room. They undressed, put on swimsuits, and over them their shorts and shirts. They rolled towels in waterproof bags, which they would carry across the moat. Well, that was a funny little exchange. An absolute dream boy. Bess is fun. I like Bess. Oh, you ever hit your teeth? Well, it's a big, heavy glass, and I hit my teeth with it. It's a big one. Guess what? It's almost the end of this chapter, and we're going to see a fun picture. The two girls drove off, excited by the prospect of what they might learn about the old castle. Just before reaching the drawbridge, George began to laugh. Nancy, maybe you and I are a couple of goofs. We probably are, Nancy admitted. But what put that idea into your head? George explained that she had heard that in olden times, some drawbridges were built so they could be controlled from the far side of the moat, as well as the inside of the castle. If an unwanted visitor or enemy approached the bridge while it was down, a secret mechanism under the road worked automatically to raise the bridge. Maybe there's hidden machinery on this side. In that case, maybe nobody was at the castle when we walked toward the bridge. We may have set off the mechanism, and up went the bridge. I suppose you could be right, Nancy agreed. But I still think somebody on the inside let down those two great chains on the bridge. And perhaps the same person was responsible for running water into the moat. Well, the bridge is still up, so we're in for a swim, George announced. Nancy suggested that first they walk along the edge of the moat to see if they could find the source of the water supply. It's probably the river, since the far side of the castle faces it. I've got like this much left. Am I gonna make it? I want to know about the tennis match. The girls left their shirts and shorts in the car, then walked around the edge of the moat. They discovered a newly dug trench from Deep River. Now I'm sure someone intends to keep out all visitors, Nancy remarked. She grinned. But not two people named George Vane and Nancy Drew. Where shall we swim across? George asked. Nancy surveyed the area and decided that a spot a short distance from the drawbridge might be the best place. They walked back. The two girls put their loafers into the waterproof bags, slipped into the water, and quickly swam to the other side. They pulled themselves up from the moat onto a narrow roadway and ran to an opening in the stone-walled enclosure where they thought they could avoid detection while drying off. The place had evidently once been a beautiful garden. There were still pretty flowers among the high weeds and grass. Suddenly, the still air was racked with a word heard in The Ghost of Blackwood Hall. To look up the pronunciation. And I don't remember. It's like a ghostly. Suddenly, the still air was racked with the sepulchral tones of a man's voice. Slowly but distinctly, he warned, "Swim back. Death awaits you here." End of chapter 6. It means ghostly. Why can't they just say ghostly? Suddenly, the still air was racked with the ghostly tones of a man's voice. Slowly but distinctly, he warned, "Swim back. Death awaits you here." Oh, I got it? Sepulchral. Now, would you like to see the picture? Because I think it's hilarious. They're waterproof bags. When I was reading it, I thought, it's like a sports bag. But it's just purses. It's just their purses. their handbags, right? Oh, those are pretty funny picture. They swam to the other side of the moat. That's pretty funny, right? Well, geez, Aloo, we are reading this like really fast. My voice is failing me for whatever reason. I'm trying not to like talk too loud, but I want you to hear me. I sometimes feel like I have to talk louder. My voice isn't loud in general. The books are fun at showing how much writing for teens changes over the years. Right. I mean, I really only read old books. I love a lot of children's literature, but it's like old. And I don't know what teen lit is like now. I probably wouldn't like it. I don't really like much current stuff. You know, I just stick to things I like or things I think I might like. And it just happens to be old stuff. This is really fun. So was this the first time they went? This must be sunrise. I thought this was sunset, but I think this is the first time they happen upon the castle. And it was in the morning. I mean, they didn't happen upon it. They saw it in the distance and they went to go look at it. Look at the way she's standing, her position, George. She looks like she's creeping out at someone, creepily. Mm. A book you would absolutely love if you can ever find it is The Real Diary of a Real Boy by Henry Shute. I'll write it down. I have nowhere to write it at the moment. I have a pen. Remind me, or like put it in the comments or something when you can comment. You can't, with the lives, I think it has to process for a long time before you can comment on it, maybe. I don't know. Just comment that. Real Diary of a Real Boy. Oh, speaking of, well, this is an old book. Secret Diary of Adrian Mole. I found that one time in a used bookstore and I was like, this looks interesting because just from the cover, it had Naughty on it. And I was like, hey, Naughty's on this. So I just got it and I read it and I loved it. It's so funny. And it was made into a movie, but I haven't seen the movie. But the book was so funny. It's his actual diary from when he was 11 years old in late 1800s New England, spelling and all. Oh, that sounds awesome. Henry Shute. I'll just remember Henry Shute. I'll look him up. Well, we read 4 chapters. Yeah. See, I have to count with my fingers. I can't believe we read 4 whole chapters. But it was fun, right? We had Mrs. Hempstead, Crazy Mr. Wheeler, a sepulchral voice. Oh, is it a ghost? Too bad Bess didn't go. She would have had fun with the ghost. She'll say, I told you there was a ghost. All right. I'm 1 hour, 59 minutes and 22 seconds. So I'm going to say aloha for now. Everyone have a great weekend. I will look up Henry Shute. I will have something to eat. I will go outside and enjoy the day because it looks sunny and I don't think it's going to rain. And I will be productive. I will finish my cross stitch. I will do a few other things. Oh, Secret in the Old Attic. We're due for a chapter. So I'm going to let my voice rest a little and then try to record a chapter properly. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.